where faith matters. The Rev and the Rabbi. Talk Radio 77 WABC.
Welcome back. I'm Rabbi Joseph Potasnik.
And I'm Reverend A.R. Bernard.
Reverend, we have with us, first it was a United States member of Congress from Long Island. Then he graduated America's congressman. Now he's a statesman in the world. I'm talking about Congressman Peter King, whom I've been privileged to know for many, many years, and his wife Rosemary and his kids. And, you know, I was talking to someone the other day about Peter King, and he said to me, this is a person who is an exemplar of all that is decent, all that is dignified. Whether you agree or disagree with him, he's a person principled. And he said, how rare is that today, not only in politics, but how rare is that to find someone who what you see is what he is. So it's a great honor to have you with us, Congressman King.
Rabbi, thank you. Really, thank you for the introduction. Thank you, Reverend. And again, you went a little bit overboard, but it sounded good.
But you'll accept it. But I don't hear you rejecting. I don't hear you rejecting or refuting anything I said. Yeah.
No, not. I was going to say it's an act of Christian charity, but it's the Rabbi. I really take it. So thank you.
Yeah.
I will tell you, the microphone started getting slippery because of the butter. All the butter. What can I say here?
Congressman, let's begin. During all of your years in Congress, do you ever remember a time when the rhetoric was so heated, when we were so divided? I mean, we've had some conflicts, but anything that compares to the present?
No, we had some very tough moments. Like during the Clinton impeachment, that became very bitter and almost vicious on both sides. But once it was over, it was over. I mean, that was like a 2-week period of real anger and almost hatred in some cases. But it happened right before the Christmas, Hanukkah break. We come back. It was pretty much in the past. This has been going on now really since probably in 2020 during COVID. It really began, which surprisingly you would have thought that could have brought people together. But instead, in Congress, that seemed to really make the divisions worse than ever. And then it's not because I left, but after I left in Congress in 2021, when Trump went out and Biden came in, both sides were dug in just continually. It's day in and day out. I mean, I talk to people in Congress who do want to work out some bipartisan agreements, and there's almost nothing you can't work out some sort of agreement on. And if you're in the minority, you're fighting hard to get 48%. You're fighting hard to get a piece of what's going to be decided on. Now the attitude is, unless you're getting 100%, it's nothing. You're going to fight it to the death. Mm-hmm. So whether it's a tax bill or a highway bill or an armed services bill or almost anything, it's all or nothing. And if you cooperate with the other side, that's the other thing. You know, the American people, they say that they want people to work together and, they want bipartisanship. If you do get involved and you do work out a compromise, maybe 80% of the people think it's a good idea, but nobody hears from them. Instead, your side, the hardcore people accuse you of being a traitor. That said to Democrats, it said to the Republicans. If you compromise today, you sign on to a bill that's sponsored by somebody on the other side of the aisle, even if you got a lot in there for your side, you're considered a traitor. Like, for instance, I can go back, I guess, 2 or 3 years ago, they had basically a public works bill which put more assistance into Long Island and New York, especially Long Island, than any bill probably in history. And the Republicans who supported that bill, even though the money was coming into the district and the projects we needed, this wasn't make-work stuff, this was real important projects, they were attacked as traitors for signing on and voting for a bill that a Democrat's name was on. That wouldn't have happened 10, 15, 20 years ago. You could have, but now, and then when it comes to a primary, there's a rule in politics, and I guess most rules are made to be broken, but a rule is that in primary elections, maybe 15, 20% of the voters are going to come out in the party. There's also another rule that maybe 10% of each party is fanatical. They're absolutely, totally hyper-partisan. Well, that 10% is going to come out in the primary. And so they have an inordinate influence in the primaries. Classic example, I think, of several years ago is Eric Cantor, who probably was the most conservative majority leader the Republicans ever had. You couldn't find anybody more conservative than Eric Cantor. Really, really hardcore. But for some reason, they decided to go after him. I think it was Laura Ingraham or somebody found some amendment, some obscure amendment on an obscure immigration bill from 5 years before, and they used that against him in a primary. They ran a professor no one ever heard of, and he beat Eric Cantor in the primary. Mm-hmm. Now, if that had gone to a general election, Eric would have gotten 75-80% of the vote. But in the primary, you get a smaller turnout, and the hardcore come out against him. Basically, generated by national talk radio at that time. That was that, and also the emergence of social media. And Eric Cantor, who could have been on his way to the White House, ended up out of office. So that's the example. And also, you can have the AOC election over Joe Crowley. Now, there could have been other reasons for that, but to have somebody who had never been known by anyone score an election over somebody who was in line to become maybe Speaker of the House in a primary, the primaries and social media and cable TV have had a disproportionate impact on politics. I sound very old-fashioned in this. Maybe we should consider going back more to the old clubhouse bosses who can at least screen people out.
Mm-hmm. Before we went on the air, you and I, Congressman, were talking about a convergence of social and political events in a short period of time.
Yeah.
I just reflect on that, would you, for our audience?
Yeah. Basically, I was saying that any one of 4 or 5 events that happened over the last few weeks could have been, in the past, a major story for 5, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months. First of all, the fact of the back before that, Joe Biden's debate performance, which was so poor. And it was certainly every day it was Joe Biden, is he going to stay on? Democratic moves to remove him from office. Joe Biden fighting back to stay in office. And then an attempted assassination of President Trump, which is probably as close as anyone has ever come to being assassinated. To have an AR-15 fired from 450 feet away and cut off part of your ear and not hit your head at all is absolutely, again, literally unheard of. And he survived that. And then you had, right after that, you had all the talk, where was the Secret Service? How did these things go wrong? Then you have the start of the Republican convention, and you have the federal judge in Florida throwing out probably the strongest case against President Trump, throwing it out of court. You're dismissing the charges. And then you have the convention itself now, where you're picking someone who wrote a book about hillbillies several years ago. And again, he's a very qualified guy. I'm not getting into that. But all of these events, each of those events could have been a major, major story. Now they're just all together in one. And you wonder, how much can the American people absorb? Do we absorb it? I mean, you can go back, say 50, 60 years ago, and you read about maybe a small scandal in an administration, and that held the attention of the media in the country for weeks and months at a time. Now, yes, today's scandal tomorrow becomes ancient history. And I mean, people, it's just so much happening at one time. So much is coming at us, how much is being appreciated by the people, and also you wonder how much serious thought has been given to all the events we're facing. Plus, the war is still going on in Ukraine. There's still, the war in Gaza. The Israeli hostages are still being held. All this is happening. China is still threatening Taiwan, and somehow I guess we keep going. But you just wonder, are we giving sufficient thought to what's affecting us today? What impact does that have on people's psyche?
Congressman, Reverend and I were together last week at a press conference with the mayor about rhetoric. Do you really think that anything we say, proclaim, use a prophetic voice, do you think it's going to matter? I mean, it seems to me some people thrive on divisiveness. They want to see us against them. They're not interested in unity. And I sometimes think that we're just blowing in the wind.
Yeah, I think it's going to be very, very difficult. People are so dug in. And let me just maybe go a little sideways on this. As bad as Joe Biden's debate was, even he is conceding how bad it was, still, as of 10 days later, he only dropped 1 or 2 points in the poll. The reason I'm saying is people are so dug in that those who hate Donald Trump are going to hate him. Those who hate Joe Biden are still going to hate him. And so even like Donald Trump's numbers, you would think after surviving an assassination attempt, his numbers would have skyrocketed. There's a poll come out like a day later, everything showed him still behind. So, in some states, ahead in others. So I think people are so locked into their predispositions, to their what do you call it, hatred, dislikes, strong partisan views, that it's almost impossible to hope for the rhetoric to tone down much. It may for a day or two, but then,
Right.
for instance, I'm not trying to be partisan. Joe Biden was saying, yeah, we have to tone down the rhetoric. But after all, Donald Trump is threatening democracy. Well, that's a pretty serious charge. And I'm sure Donald Trump will say the equivalent to Biden. So, no, we're no longer saying that this person shouldn't be president because his tax policies don't work, or this person's foreign policies should be stronger. Basically, we're saying he shouldn't be president because he's evil. And both sides are saying that. And that's a dangerous path to get out. I mean, you go back to, let's say, Adlai Stevenson and Dwight Eisenhower. No one was saying the other guy was evil. Kennedy and Nixon, probably the best campaign of the last century. Two guys who fought it down to basically a tiebreaker. And no matter what was said and done, no one was accusing the other one of being a crook or a thief or an evil person or trying to sell out the country. It was an honest debate. Who's doing more for working people? Who's doing more for jobs? Who's going to be stronger standing up to the Soviet Union? But no, it was not the personal vitriol that you have today.
So let me ask you a question, because, and I love the way you brought perspective to all of these events converging and shaping and influencing us. Do you think that because we're basically dug in, that it was a right strategy for the Republican Party to bring to the platform the president, the head of the Teamsters Union, Amber Rose, who is a symbol of pop culture in trying to appeal to blue-collar workers and pop culture? Do you think that was a smart strategy on their part because they think that there's going to be a particular group who will present the tipping point of the election?
Yeah, let me just say that as far as the Teamster president, Sean O'Brien, I think that was a masterstroke by Donald Trump. And I'm sort of putting myself into this a bit. Back in 2000, I was at a news conference at the Republican Convention in Philadelphia with Jim Hoffa, head of the Teamsters. And I was calling on Republicans to let labor into the room. There's too much of this idea of, Republicans are business, Democrats are labor, and, the twain shall never meet. Well, the fact is that I think that a lot of people in the Teamsters Union, the construction trade unions, and others that Republicans should listen to. And again, I go back to my thing. The unions come in, okay, maybe we're going to disagree with 60%. Well, if you can accommodate them for 40%, you're going to win over some of their voters. And there shouldn't be this hatred. A union, to me, a union leader is a leader. He's not a boss. And I used to drive me crazy in Washington, where I would have Southern Republicans. Every labor leader was a boss. And of course, then you get Democrats, and they think every business guy is a crook and a capitalist crook and all that. No, I think bringing the Teamster head in there, that to me could be a step toward opening things up to get a dialogue going. As far as Amber Rose, I have to defer on that one. I watched her. I'm no expert on pop culture. Usually the rabbi is my consultant on that, and I couldn't get a hold of him that night.
I was watching Lawrence Welk, yeah.
But, I mean, from what I know of her now and from watching her, I thought it was a good stroke by Republicans, especially since she seems to, cover a lot of bases. She's female. She's a mixed race. She's outspoken. Obviously, she had been very anti-Trump. So the fact that now she's saying positive things about him, you would hope that would open it up rather than Republicans are saying, okay, we grab them. They're on our side.
Yeah. So doesn't it send a message to all of us to stop with this Pavlovian behavior that because my father, grandfather voted a certain way, I have to vote that way, to be more open to listening and learning about the other side before you make a decision? Look at a platform, look at positions on issues, rather than just looking at the partisan label that because so-and-so is a member of a particular party, therefore I have to vote for that person, without studying positions on the other side.
Well, Rabbi, if I may, because Amber Rose did just that. She said that her father really inspired her, her father, who was white, inspired her to take a look at Trump's history and his record and make a decision based on that. So according to her, this is exactly what she did.
Yeah, but I always hear people saying, I can't vote for that party. I can't vote for so-and-so. Their mind is made up before they have all the facts. And I'm just wondering if this is going to be an opportunity to challenge that thinking as she did and saying, don't be so parochial. Don't be so closed-minded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I would hope so. And it would be great. I think the exemplar, though, of what you're calling for was Joe Lieberman, who was a hardcore, dedicated Democrat, and he crossed party lines to support John McCain. He certainly supported me on several occasions, but he he judged each issue by itself. He ran for vice president of the United States as a Democrat, but still, when he came back to the Senate, he didn't make it. And he had a lot to complain about. They lost in the contested election, but he would vote with the Republicans where he thought it was right. He'd stay with the Democrats on issues where he thought it was right. But even on issues like, for instance, where he would stay with the Democrats and something like abortion, he never demonized the other side. And that's the other, I don't think people who are pro-life should be saying that people who are pro-choice are baby killers. And I don't think that people who say someone is pro-life means that they're anti-woman. And we get into that. Let's find an honest way to debate these issues. And I would say of all the people I've known in politics, no one personified that more than Joe Lieberman.
I remember when Koch, voted outside of his party, he supported Bush when he was mayor of the city of New York.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that was unheard of. Yet he said, I have to do what I think is right, that is compatible with the principles I hold, dear to me. So,
no, I'm not. Yeah. I was not at the convention this week because my wife is recovering from surgery. I stayed home with her and I watched it on television. But I wish I'd been in the hall when Sean O'Brien was speaking, because I know a lot of those Republicans who were sitting on the House floor. They could not have enjoyed listening to some of the stuff that Sean O'Brien was saying. But it was a wake-up call for them.
Mm.
I can see them. They must have been gritting their teeth and saying, what's gotten into Trump? Why is he bringing this guy here? But I give Trump credit for that. And also, I wonder when, for instance, if Sean O'Brien does speak at the Democratic convention, and as of yet, he has not been invited. If he does, that shows him a lot of Democrats in that room that are angry at him. But if we can do more of that, shake it up. One thing about being in New York, with all the faults we have, and I'll speak more here about Nassau County than others, is that we dealt with everybody. If you went to Republican headquarters on election night, you went in there and there was a party chairman's office. Not everybody was allowed in, but you would have labor leaders in there. You would have local business people in there. You would have rabbis, priests. It was a cross section. We're used to dealing with each other. And I could deal with Charlie Rangel all the time. And we used to sit down and we used to go back and forth on things. And we didn't agree on a lot, but we always accommodated one another. We went to dinner. We would talk. We would never really exchanged a harsh word personally. There's more of that in New York. I find in Washington, you have black Democrats from districts that they really never had to deal with white people. You have white people from states who have never met anyone who is basically not one of theirs. They've never met an Italian or an Irish person. They've certainly never met a black. They've never dealt with a labor leader. It's like different worlds. And in New York, whether everyone gets along or not, they know how to deal with each other. They understand someone. They're not shocked when somebody walks in with a different accent or a different sounding last name. So with all the faults we have in New York, I find that in New York, for instance, in New York, we used to have bipartisan lunches and breakfasts. That sort of stopped near the end. California never had that, though. I mean, it was not unusual watching the House floor to find House Republicans from New York talking to Democrats back and forth. Can we do this or do that? Or if not, just how are your kids doing? How are your grandchildren doing? In California, most of those people never talk to each other. It's Republicans, Democrats. They're like two different countries.
Wow. That's well said. And it's really a testimony in many ways, because our Rabbi and I talk about that. This show is predicated on that reality. Yep. There's interfaith dialogue, ecumenical dialogue, dialogue between parties, political parties. That's what New York is all about, in the Northeast, essentially, which is interesting because the rest of the country, they can't figure us out. We're either a traitor or something's wrong with us.
We don't decide a relationship based on we agree with each other. Obviously there should be some core values that are very important to you that the other side respects as well. But this idea that we have to be this uniformity rather than diversity of thought is beyond us. By the way, I want you to know, I know, you know as well, clergy who have given a prayer at a convention of one party, and many of those people get lambasted. How could you give and it was a prayer for peace. It was a prayer for the government, right?
Yes.
And how dare you? And I remember one person saying, but the other side didn't invite me. I would have done both sides. But if they invite you to offer a prayer, and then one was challenged by his congregation, don't you dare go and give a prayer. And he said, you know what? I'm not going. It's not worth the aggravation. Right. That's how divided we are in that sense. A simple prayer.
In New York, though, about respecting others and still somehow living together. See, I never considered New York to be a melting pot. To me, it's more like a mosaic, a stained glass window. But all together as one, but we also keep our own identity. And so we add to the overall beauty. We remain who we are, and yet we respect the others. It's not like no one expects a Jew to become a Christian or a Christian to become a Jew or to have an atheist become, Christian fundamentalist. I mean, you keep your identity, you keep your views, but you respect those of your neighbor. That's why I guess it was Mario Cuomo who used that metaphor, of the mosaic, that you maintain your individual beauty and identity, but you become an integral part of the whole.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, well said. Absolutely. And I think we should be a model for the rest of the country.
In some ways.
Yeah. I was waiting for the amen. I didn't get that one. Okay.
Yeah. Why
I need to beef up my amen corner there. Okay, go ahead.
Why is it that some people get, who have not much influence, get so much attention on right and left? I remember years ago it was Pelosi or Steny Hoyer saying, look, the squad is just a few people. They get a disproportionate amount of attention in the party. The party caters to that wing. You go on the right, Marjorie Taylor Greene, the attention she receives. Why do we allow a handful to dominate so much? I don't dominate his word, but to take up so much room, to we give them so much oxygen.
Yeah,
I would say it's probably social media. I think it began with cable TV, but it's just magnified itself. So I don't know, 1,000-fold through social media. They can reach people, and many of the people on social media sort of lead lonely lives, or they're looking for the simple answer. They're looking for the conspiracy view, or they're looking for, for victimhood. And you can play to that on social media, and so they get the attention, and then people on social media start contacting their congressional offices or contacting party leaders, and it gives them a disproportionate sense of power that they really have. But if you're in Congress, we used to count how many letters we got in. Now you can get like thousands of emails and text messages, within the hour, based on some outspoken or crazy member of Congress or somebody on radio or television says something, and it gets out there in social media, and it takes over. It becomes a life of its own.
Yeah.
You pointed out something, Rabbi, because I think about what people gravitate to when they are concerned about safety, security, when they're concerned about their place in society, order, stability. All of these things come into play. And do you think that it pushes us towards an authoritarian leadership and authoritarian voices who can promise that I'm going to fix this, within a short period of time, I've got all the answers? Do you think that those fear concerns actually influence the way people vote?
I think they do. But again, there is a time when you have a breakdown in law and order where you do need to give the police more power, and you have to obviously, hope and make sure, take measures that it doesn't become authoritarian. So there's that balance back and forth. But I think it's harder to find a balance these days because if there's one act of police brutality, then they're saying that the police should be defunded. On the other hand, if a crime is committed somewhere and it's a particularly heinous crime, then people say send in 1,000 cops and lock everybody up. So the idea is to find that balance, and it's harder to find that today. That's why I'm surprised. I hate to be giving you guys so much credit. I'm surprised your show does so well, because basically you're violating all the rules of contemporary media. To have more than 2 or 3 minutes of discussion is really too much. If you notice, most of the shows you watch, it's quick and bang, bang, 4 or 5 minutes and back and forth, people yelling and screaming at each other, then you cut for a commercial. I mean, to actually have discussion and try to figure out why, and just your question there, Reverend, you're admitting you don't know the answer. Well, that doesn't work today. I mean, you're supposed to, every question, you're supposed to say, you know everything, and the other guy's a dope. That's how, maybe I am a dope, but, but you didn't at least admit, claim you knew everything. No, I'm just saying, actually having a discussion where we're saying, we don't know what the answer is. We got to work our way out of this. How often do you see that? Everyone has the answer. They get on there. This is exactly what we have to do. If we do this by next week, the economy will be great. Crime will end.
It's interesting. When you look at the Bible, and Rev, you and I study commentaries, there are times that commentators say, I don't understand this. I don't have an answer. You don't, we've grown up in a tradition where you don't have to have immediate answers. And by the way, in Jewish tradition, it's always you're right and you're right. We're both right. But today, my God, it's I'm right. And how dare you even differ with what I think, because you are an idiot.
Well, isn't that part of Western culture? In Western culture, we want certainty. The Bible, our books, our sacred texts, they're written in an Eastern context, a Middle Eastern context, where it was okay to not have all the answers. It was okay to have mystery. But in Western culture, we want certainty. We have to know, and that's it. And that creates a problem, and we see it playing out in our political discourse. It's like, sit down, I'm going to tell you why you're wrong and I'm right. And that's how the conversation begins. Yeah. Right or wrong.
An intelligent society is supposed to be searching for information, searching for solutions. Today, the theme is whoever's doing the talking knows the solution already. He knows really, how often do you see a commentator on television say, we have this terrible unrest. We have this terrible situation. What do we do about it? They always start off by telling you that they know what the answer is. And how come you don't agree with them? They do it backwards.
What do you think about people who say to you, I don't like both candidates and I'm not voting? What's your response to that, Congressman?
I would say get more involved in the system. The fact that you have to make a choice, because by not making a choice, you are making a choice. And so to me, like writing in a third party or whatever, to me, that's just stuck in the issue. Unless there were two, let's say, fascists or two communists running against each other, with the Democratic Society, the Democratic Party selected Joe Biden as of now. Donald Trump, who I didn't support at the start, he is the nominee of the Republican Party. And if you want to go for the other party, that's one thing. But if you, that's what it's come down. I don't want to have a system like we saw in France for many years. In some ways, like we do in Israel today, we have 5 or 6 different candidates running, and they end up having these coalitions. I think in the U.S., we can't afford to have coalitions like that. We have to, whoever it is, we have to give the president, we have to one person who does have the authority to make the tough decisions, and then we can contest them 4 years later, or we can contest them in Congress. But we have a two-party system, and to me, it's important to make a choice. Maybe it's the lesser of two evils. You can look at it that way, but still, there is a difference.
Which is better? Yeah, which one is better?
Yeah.
I do that.
Congressman, if I may, what do you think about the statements that are being made from both sides that if either candidate wins, it's going to be the end of America? Are we that weak as a nation? Are we that fragile as a nation that the outcome of one election can cause the nation to collapse? You've been in the system long enough. Speak to that, please.
No, the American people, and I'm not just saying this as a super patriot, we have amazing powers of regeneration, whether it's economic collapses, whether it's pandemics, whether it's 9/11, whether it's Pearl Harbor, almost anything we've been faced with, the American people come back, and they come back quicker than any other country in the world, because we do have this diversity of ideas. We have individualism. We have the people. We have incentives where, unlike, let's say, Europe, where people are guaranteed sort of a soft life, they take their 6-week vacations every summer. Americans are raised in a culture where you have to work to get ahead, and that innovative spirit stays with us. So during the tough times, whether it's business-wise, whether it's religion, whether it's politics, we come back. So I think, listen, I'm not overly optimistic about politics today. Having said that, the American people will go on and will still end up being the greatest country in the world. But the worst thing is to do it to people who back out. They're all the same. Forget it. I'm not getting involved. Well, that can cause a deterioration, but our country is never going to collapse so long as we have some element of the American spirit left.
Well,
and see, that's the America I know. That's the America I love. The fact that we've been resilient in the face of so many crises, that we continue to evolve and grow. Yeah, there's a lot still wrong, a lot that we still have to straighten out and get right. But the fact that we're engaged in that activity, the fact that we're doing that, and it's unfortunate that we go to these extremes. Like, okay, if this one wins, everything's going to collapse. If that one wins, everything's going to collapse. But that's not true, and that's reassuring, Congressman, to the American public, I believe. Rabbi,
I think we're able to say we love America, and we don't have to qualify it. Well, but I think a number of young people are unable to make that statement. We're able to say we're proud of America. I see, especially on these college campuses, you would have to search wide and far for some of those people who say, I'm proud of America. And here they are, the universities getting scholarships, loans forgiven. And yet the signs, the statements are so anti-American. I mean, it's shocking.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I think we take for granted, so many people take for granted the freedoms we have, the privileges we have. I think almost every immigrant group, and I know it's African Americans, that's a separate category because they were brought here as slaves, but every immigrant group that's come here has been given the opportunity, to move ahead. First generation is tough, second generation a little better. By the time it's the third generation, they're fat, dumb, and happy. I mean, they're just, they made it, they do well. And then thank God more immigrants come along with that spirit. It's that spirit of fighting hard, working your way up, not thinking that you're entitled to a living. You have to work hard for a living. And that's why, again, I strongly support immigration. I think it's important to make it legal immigration. But having said that, immigrants, I think, are the lifeblood of so many communities.
Congressman Peter King, let me say this about you in closing. You have been able to inspire many people. You've even been able to inspire members of your family to get involved in politics. And very often kids say, I'm not doing what you're doing. How many times have you seen kids run away from what their parents were doing? You've taught the kids to be communitarians, to be engaged in the community, to fight for what you think is right, to speak up. You have a relationship with your wife that is very, very special. She's appeared with you on many, many platforms. You are it's a real story of love and loyalty to family and to country. So we're privileged to have you.
Well, thank you.
That sounds like a book title.
Both of you. Thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. But it still sounds like a book title, Love and Loyalty. Think about that, Congressman.
Yeah, but some people think that's a fiction book. And
by the way, while I have both of you guys, let me take advantage. Both of you say a prayer for me, okay? Having both sides with me is really good. So there you go.
Yeah. Well, we
got you covered. We
get the cardinal engaged as well. So you got everybody.
I got the trifecta. Here we go.
That's it.
I got the Trinity. Okay.
Well, I'm not ready to go that far. I love you, Cardinal. I love you, Congressman. But okay, there are boundaries. Thank you.
I love that one. I love that one.
I'm happy with the trifecta.
He's ready to go to a break now, I'm sure.
Yeah.
On that note, okay.
Let me wipe off the perspiration first. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Have a great Sunday.
Okay, Congressman. Thank you.
Bye.
Stay tuned. We'll be back with more of The Rev and the Rabbi.